Tony, do you mind muting as well? Just so that we don't have like a lot of feedback. So there are certain chord patterns that strike a neural connection with your brain. You know, we are still, you know, evolved from the primates. So there's, you know, the way the brain moves, we connect to things that are familiar, and we are maybe a little wary, or it takes a while to warm up to things that aren't familiar. So I want to talk about a couple of really well-known chord patterns. And these chord patterns happen repeatedly through time, repeatedly through history, repeatedly through different phases in the music business. And again, for those of you that know this, like I'm just reinforcing what you already know, but there might be some people like Juliet that this is new. Uh, so one of the most famous patterns is what's called 1 minor 6, 4, 5. And what I mean by that is the one is you know, like in Sound of Music, it's like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's like 1 to 8. There are 1 to 8 notes in the scale. So you're using the first chord, which is the 1, and then we're going to the minor 6th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so this chord pattern, as ridiculous as it is, it's, you know, it's heart and soul. Dum dum dum, da 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 dum, da 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 da. So we've all heard that, you know, when you're like young and playing the piano. But the heart and soul is also every breath you take and every vow you break. Every claim you stake, every breath you take, I'll be watching you. 'Cause darling, darling, stand by me. Whoa, won't you stand by me just as long as you stand by me. And so baby, 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 oh, baby, 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 oh, baby, 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 oh, I thought you'd always be mine, so darling, stand by me. So as you could see, you would never necessarily equate Justin Bieber with, you know, Benny King, but there it is. And then if I mix up the chords a little bit and do, let's say, a 1 to a 5 to a minor 6, 4, and it's just reversing the sequence a little bit, I can suddenly get with or without you, with or without you, I can't live with or without you. So promise I'll be kind, I won't stop until that boy is mine. Baby, there's no other superstar, you know that I'll be paparazzi. So as you could see, there's a really interesting thing. And I mean, I have my own sort of mystical thought that our brain, that's just, you know, lots of neuroreceptors and connectors, you know, we're wired to like things that we like. We're wired to like ice cream, or we're wired to like the sun or something. And we just naturally open up to that. So people using these chord progressions, you know, 1 minor 6, 4, 5, or obviously 1, 4, 5 is, you know, is a really big chord progression that you know, some people call me the space cowboy. Some people call me the gangster of love. And Some people call me Morty. So it's the Joker by Steve Miller, but it's also John Hall's, one of his top 5 hits. We've been together since way back when. Sometimes I never want to see you again. And I don't have the lyrics, but then after all these years, you're still the one I want, whispered in my ear. Still the one I talk to in bed, still the one that turns my head. We're still having fun, still the one. So this 145 could be a hit from, I mean, it's just repeated over and over again. And so for those of you that have guitars in your room or whatever, like, again, in the key of G, the 1 is a G chord, the 4 is a C chord, the 5 is a D chord, and then back to G. If I was in, let's say, the key of A and using different chords, you know, it's A and D and E. Or if it's 1 minor 6 4 5, it's A, and then the minor 6 is F sharp minor, and then the 4 is D, and then the 5 is E. So there are just countless songs that have these chord progressions, and for some reason they just ring a bell in our mind, in our heart. We hear something, we don't know that we're listening to the Police, but really we used to play Heart and Soul on the piano, and it's exactly the same chords, and that's why it's just, we hear it once and we like it. So that's a little bit and of a much deeper conversation. We have so much to cover. The next thing that I want to cover, and what I want to say, like Erica and Sophie, is anybody who has questions, we're going to, instead of playing whack-a-mole and chasing the questions and eating up all the time, we're going to devote the last part of the whole class to just answering the questions in order. So feel free, if you have a question, just to raise your hand, and that way we have a conversation going. There's another thing that I have that I want to share with you, and then we're jumping over to Steve Wolf, is this idea of melody development. And I have my own strange theory of what I call tension and release in melody. And what it is like, if you're watching a movie, let's say we're watching Star Wars, if we just saw, you know, and I'm going to go back to the original set of Star Wars, if we just saw like Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan and R2-D2 and Princess Leia and everyone was living happily, wouldn't be much of a plot. It wouldn't be much of a drama. We wouldn't have that excitement of these dueling good and evil, bad and good, the, you know, the Empire versus, you know, the Jedi. So by having this conflict, by having Darth Vader, by having, you know, the stormtroopers, the bad guys, supposedly, we have this dance of tension and release. And the same thing happens in melody, where a lot of people who are sophisticated at creating melodies will sometimes put notes into a melody that are not necessarily in the chord they're playing. They're notes outside the chord. So excuse this really like ridiculous looking thing, but you know, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that little like pitchfork thing on the top is like the 1, the 3, and the 5. That's a chord. But between that chord, there are like cute little notes like the 2 and the 4. So a really good example of this is the song Yesterday by the Beatles. So it's a perfect example because Yesterday starts on an F chord. But his note is not that note. His note is so it's yesterday. So just the first note, when I just strip it down and I sing it and I play the note on the guitar, it sounds pretty weird. Yesterday. Now he could have gone yesterday, but he didn't. He went yesterday. And then the all is an A note against an E minor chord. So it's this weird, like this 4. It's like this note in between that he's playing that if I strip it down, like all my troubles seem so, and then the word far is like an E note against a D minor, which for you musicians know is like two notes right next to each other. It's like when your cat jumps on a piano, like and jumps across. It's like yesterday, troubles seem so far away. You have to get to the away for it to sound harmonious again. So what you get is suddenly just in the first line, yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. You get this beautiful bouquet of melody. It's like roses in the spring or something. It's this beautiful sound. And then he goes, now it looks as though they're here. And the word here is again, it's this little clashy poo note. It's a 4, and he's playing a 5 and a 3 and a 1. You know, na 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 na. Oh, I believe in yesterday. And then it resolves on the A, which is the 3A. So what that does is it creates a really nice sound that really has a je ne sais quoi, to use a French word. It has this unspeakable, cool quality to it. Now, just to give you an example, if I was going to strip that down and show you what it would look like without this tension release of notes going in and out of the chord, I could sing it like this. I could go, yesterday, love was such an easy game to play. Now I need a place to hide away. Oh, I believe in yesterday. And that's a nice song too, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's missing the special sauce. And the special sauce is that yesterday. So that's just one thing. And again, to make sure we have enough time for everybody, I'm going to quickly, just today I was playing around with one of John Hall's songs, who's with us now, with a beautiful cloudy sky, clear blue sky with some clouds. But you know, one of his songs, Dance With Me, has all of this tension and release going on. It doesn't go, dance with me, I want to be your partner, can't you see? It doesn't do that. It goes, dance with me. So it's like it's like, what is it? It's a major
suspended to resolving to the third.
Right, right. So it's like a. So it's like this, da, na, na. It's the same really thing. Instead of yesterday, he's going, dance with me. You got that from Paul McCartney, didn't you? Because it's really, he's starting on the same note, the second, that gosh darn second of the chord. Dance with me, I want to be a partner. And then he goes to the minor 9. I'm in G, by the way, John. I know it's in E or some other key, but
it's in D and it goes to the 4 chord.
Yeah, so
the sus2 resolve.
Yeah, so I'm doing the dumbed down version of 1 minor 6. So it's like, dance with me, I want to be a partner, can't you see? No, that's not
change. No, it's a 4 chord there.
It's a can't you see?
Right.
That's it. So that's even a weirder thing. That's like an F sharp note.
It's a suspension being resolved. It's actually
can't you see?
It's a G chord with an A and a C sharp resolving to the B and the D, which are actually in the chord. So both, it's repeating a motif. The first chord has the same sus and resolve. The second one has the sus and resolve. Relatively, it's the same thing to that chord. And then it's, that's the 2 minor.
Okay.
And it goes back home again.
Right. so he's playing it like the guy who wrote it. I'm playing it like the guy who's really a piano player and doesn't actually play. So I'm playing the dance with me. I want to be your partner. And I'm going to the minor because I can't play the chord he's playing. Can't you see? There's a very nice minor 9 here, by the way. Can't you see? The music is your starting night. It's completely wrong. But the idea is that what he did intuitively is just put these notes that are not the 1, not the 3, and not the 5, you know, that the melody dances within those chord structures. And this is something you're not going to necessarily sit down and think about when you're writing a song. Like, I have to use the minor 2 or the major 7. It's just an intuitive thing. Once we've talked about it, you're going to like notice it. It's quantum physics. And, you know, I actually had and then we've got to go to Wolf, who's been so patient. You know, I had a conversation once with Paul McCartney, and I was out in the Hamptons, and he was just sitting by himself at a picnic table, minding his business. And I just sort of like rushed him with this thought of like, I teach your song in my NYU songwriting class, and you start on a G note, but you're playing an F chord. And, you know, he admitted like that if he tried to explain the songwriting process, that it would stop. You know, it's like a flow. And we talked about that last week, that it's this really organic, like you're channeling. You can't say, I want to channel the great divine spirit of the hawk. You know, the great divine spirit of the hawk decides whether you're worthy and comes through and says, get out of the way, mofo, I'm coming through. And
exactly,
the best thing you could do is just get out of the way at the time. So music is like that. So we're talking about things that we're maybe doing a little bit of analysis, but the truth is that we get all of this technique maybe as a performer, maybe as a singer, but then we throw that out the window and vibe. And that's what music is. And that's what the greatest composers have done. So segueing now to try to keep enough time for people who have questions, I want to introduce Steve Wolf, who is a friend and was introduced to me by a studio owner in Brooklyn named Oliver Strauss. Great studio called Mission Sound. And Steve has really been through not just being a performer and a player, and not just being a Berklee School graduate, but he's played with so many different,
by the way.
Not non-graduate, almost graduate, which is good. You're not supposed to graduate from Berklee. It means like you're playing by the rules too much. And he's just really witnessed the entire creative process of recording, demoing, re-recording, looking at arrangements, taking a song like clay, and how do you mold it once you have this rough thing? Because it can go in infinite directions. So I'm like, let him, you know, carry on, and we'll go back and forth.
All right. Hey, thanks for that kind introduction, Larry. And yeah, we met at Mission Sound. I've done a lot of work there over the years. And as Larry said, and I have done some writing and remixing and production, but I still consider myself, I used to call myself a session drummer, but these days the line's getting blurred between drum programming and real drumming. I just call myself a rhythm maker. So, because these days I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I'm providing rhythm, but whether it's electronic or acoustic or a combination of both, that's what I do. And I think drummers, I mean, every musician, no matter what they play, they contribute to the song. Because I really think that for at least my favorite records, the production is as important as the writing. And that's what makes, like, a lot, there's certain songs that it's a hit song if the person just sings it by themselves, but so many records, because we grew up loving records and getting hooked on certain tracks. It's, like, good, you've worked with Brian Wilson. So like the whole Pet Sounds thing where he was starting to experiment. And to me, the production on a song like Good Vibrations, that what he did with the production is as much a part of what made that song a worldwide hit as the writing of the song, which is technically just the lyrics and the melody. And nowadays you get publishing for the production, which back in the day, that wasn't a thing. So, or is not as much of a thing. And so yeah, so I've kind of learned to write and arrange and produce by just paying attention on sessions from the time I started doing sessions, even before that, just touring, because, you know, hearing how an artist will want to, especially if it's an artist that has had hits for years, sometimes they get bored of playing the same arrangement they've been doing for decades, and just seeing how they want to rearrange a song and how it gives it new life. So just by paying attention and asking questions at the right time, because I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing people, I've learned a lot about constructing songs just from the drummer seat. And Billy, I think you're muted, but Billy Amendola, who's from Modern Drummer magazine, but also before Modern Drummer, I'm assuming it's before Modern Drummer, also a songwriter and a drummer on some big hit records. Knows exactly what I'm talking about, like how much you observe from the drummer's seat. So yeah, if Larry, if you have any specific questions,
yeah, I mean, there are moments when lightning strikes, and
yeah.
and you know, I was watching the 16-hour Ken Burns documentary about the history of country music, and there was a guy. It was the guy from Peer Music, but the father, who just didn't even move to Nashville. He moved to like, I don't know if it was Memphis, but he just went there in 1925 and like put an ad in the paper, and suddenly the Carter sisters walked in, and this other group that became immediate country. Like within a year, there were like 5 country stars, and suddenly there was country music that didn't exist before. It was just this sort of down home thing, you know, rhythm and blues and gospel and things. So you were in a place where lightning struck with Dr. Luke in a certain era where it was just one record after another and one hit after another. What's it like inside that machine when the attention of the whole world is on you and you're cranking it out and it's like bullseye, bullseye, bullseye? What is that like?
It's funny because I've known Luke since we were both basically kids, and he got during the electronica boom, he got a major label deal when every major label was trying to like sign the next like Fatboy Slim or Chemical Brothers, and he got dropped and he was part of an electronic duo, like a DJ duo, and he was barely even playing guitar at the time. And for people who don't know, Dr. Luke is Lukasz Gottwald, and he's huge writer, producer, now publishing company owner, label owner. And he when I met him, he was a jazz guitarist. He was a kid, and just he wanted to be like the next George Benson. He was a great jazz guitar player who crossed over as a pop singer, R&B singer. And he gradually kind of shifted gears into wanting to write and produce more. And then he became a DJ, and then he got this deal and was forward thinking enough to know that this was when we were kind of gearing away from tape machines and going towards digital recording. And he told the label he wanted the entire recording budget to go to him so he could build like a Pro Tools rig in his basement. And now you can get Pro Tools or any other like high-end DAW for a pretty affordable price. Back then you were looking at tens of thousands of dollars to do that. So he built a world-class studio in his basement. And he was, you know, just cranking out track after track for years. And it was just a normal thing and like we both had MPCs. We had similar recording setups at both of our homes, except I didn't have a Pro Tools rig for about 5 more years. He was ahead of me with that. But he would just call me and say, hey, come over. I want you to program some beats on something or kind of flesh out this track with the synths or whatever it is. And not much changed. It's just that I think it's like anything else, like the cultural soil that he grew up in musically, just there came a time where what he was doing and what he had to say just kind of connected with everyone. So he was like the sound he became famous for, he'd been doing that sound for a minute. It just took a minute before the world kind of decided that was the sound. It was also right place, right time, his connecting with Max Martin, and Max hadn't had a major hit in years. That was after Max's first run. And then one of their first collaborations was Kelly Clarkson, Since You've Been Gone, which kind of reignited Max's career. And Max has been doing great since then again, and started Luke's career. But not much changed. I mean, it was still the same thing, except now he had like an assistant that would like come in when I was programming saying, do you need a drink or anything? But it was the same thing. Like he would call me and say, Max is here, meaning Max Martin. Can you come over, bring some new sounds? We got a bunch of, and they would be writing for a bunch of people, and they would just pull up some stuff in Pro Tools. They'd say, this is what we want for this track, this is what we want for that track, and just program some shit. And then they would go upstairs, because he was in a duplex, like an old rent stabilized duplex on 21st Street. And they'd go upstairs and be writing with other top line writers while I'm down there programming beats. They'd come in, one of them would come in and check on me and give me some feedback. And I remember at some point there was some very nondescript looking young woman up there, and they were like, oh, this is Katy. Like, we're gonna start working with her soon. And it was Katy Perry, but you wouldn't recognize her as who she became. But really, for me, it was kind of nothing much changed. It was just the same thing we're all doing. The only difference is now something I'd be working on within months to a year, I'd be hearing all over the radio. That's the only thing that changed. Like, the process was exactly the same with Luke and with eventually with Max, but it was just now, it was like he had direct pipeline to like the mass like consumption of their music. But as far as what we worked on, it was pretty much the same thing. For me, the thing that changed is from those guys especially, I really learned about simplicity. Because I came up, like you mentioned, playing more jazz, which is a little more complex in general. And I'd worked with pop producers and writers before those guys, but like I think Max and Luke got a lot. Luke and Max combined, but I think like Luke's tracks, that's really his vibe. He didn't really get that much from Max. I think what Luke got from Max was Max's melodic sense and being able to just take, like we were talking earlier, just really simple melodies that hit people. And some of the melodies have the tensions you're talking about, like a 9th or an 11th or whatever, but mostly a lot of it's really simple. It's just knowing which notes to put where over which chord, but a lot of their hits were real, like very simple chord wise too, harmonically. So
here's a question. Sorry to jump in, because most of the people here are sort of developing their craft and really just getting into this creative world, this creative soup. So let's say somebody is just, has just written a song or just has an idea for a song. What would you say to somebody on an entry level, like is a good place to start for recording? Is it GarageBand? Is it getting Ableton? Like, what would you say to somebody who's like really like has all these ideas? Because most people just don't know where to start and what to do.
I actually get asked this a lot, and I still have people hitting me up saying, hey, I'm writing some songs. Where's a good studio to go? And can you hook me up with session musicians and producer? And the first thing I ask is, do you have a laptop or do you have an iPhone? Because now you can even do GarageBand up to a certain amount of tracks on your iPhone and get a very inexpensive interface and make a record that sounds like good enough that you can dump it into Pro Tools and have it mixed, and you wouldn't know it was done on the phone. And there are songs on the radio that I know in part were started on people's phones now, because I'm talking to friends of mine who are working on major label stuff, and a lot of them are saying, oh, you got to check out this app, that app. I do it, I dump the WAV file into my computer and I just go from there. So I would say start, if you play an instrument, even if you don't, if the only thing you have is your voice, just sing it. Open up voice memos and sing it. Just start recording and do it every day. And if you can get the hang of doing some of your own programming, which you can do on a phone or even better on a laptop, do that. I mean, there's so much stuff available now. You can get instrumental tracks. You can get programs where you just pick a key. It's like mix and match. You pick a key and you pick a tempo, and there's all kinds of drum like grooves and fills, whatever time signature you want, and bass lines pre-constructed and guitar strumming pre-constructed for the chord changes. So it's easier than ever to do a lot on your own before you want to start spending money and bringing other people in. If you have the bread, then yeah, by all means, hire me, hire my friends. We love the work, I love helping people realize their vision. But if your funds are limited, you can do a surprising amount on your own. And And like, this is a great resource. You like, when I was a kid, I used to go to clinics, and we'd all be in a room and we'd be asking questions. And yeah, but I mean, you can go to YouTube and search pretty much any subject, and you'll find there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about, but if you weed through that, you can find some great information there. And I still do that. If I'm in a session and I forget a specific like key command of Pro Tools, and the engineer doesn't know it either at the studio, we'll just go to YouTube and we'll figure it out that way. So, but yeah, just start with whatever you have, whatever you can afford.
Are there any apps that you can recommend? Because I'm curious myself, like what phone apps might be good for doing some programming.
Actually, even GarageBand has some very basic programming stuff in it. Native Instruments, I don't really love Machine, but I think it's called iMachine, which I've heard is pretty powerful. And Akai makes a virtual, maybe it's an IMPC. And there's stuff that I'm not even aware of out there, but those are the main ones I'm aware of, are GarageBand to start, and then specifically for beats, Machine, and you can do bass lines on Machine and an MPC as well.
You know, I wanted to suggest to the group and yourself, since we're just having this conversation, there's a company called Sound Better that Spotify recently bought into, and I've been speaking with Shahar, who's the founder. And what's interesting about that is it's sort of a bridge between all of these points we're talking about. You can go on Sound Better and find somebody like Steve Wolf or find somebody like me to help, you know, musicians wherever you are in the world work on things, whether it's writing lyrics or doing tracks or playing guitar or mixing or mastering. And it's I think part of the New World Order is that this line between the professional and the person who would like to be a professional or is just taking ideas and getting them out there is really you know, blurred now and really come down, you know. So Sound Better is one thing. There's another company called Tunedly, Tunedly, and I myself, you know, I've been thinking I should even myself go up on Sound Better.
Yeah.
They were taught, and yourself. It's just a
I
way.
have friends that are on there. I've been meaning to look into it, but I have like friends that are like high-end session musicians that have been on there for a minute.
Yeah, and I'll introduce you to Shahar, who is the founder. It's just two guys. They put this together, and it's really part of the New World Order, and people. You know, it's depending on someone's budget. Some people only have a little bit of money. They need somebody to write lyrics. Some people want, you know, this is their bucket list album they're going to make once in a lifetime. So it's like they've saved up for this, or they have the means to hire the best people to do each part. And that's just, again, like you talked about, people making records on their phone, people shooting films on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the New World Order. And I have another weird question, and then we're gonna like bring John Hall into the conversation, because he's done a lot of like really what I would almost call really reverent recording with some very top musicians, like in studios like Mission Sound, but throughout history. And I want to talk about some of his experience in recording. But I have just a funny question as a fan. Like, do you notice, like, when you meet like a young Katy Perry who's like starting out and frightened, and then suddenly Fireworks comes out and it's like boom everywhere in the world, when they return for the next record, are they the same or are they different?
That's the thing. A lot of, and Billy Amendola can attest to this, the way they make records now, I haven't met half the artists. I've never met Miley Cyrus. I've never met Celine Dion. Like Billy mentioned, my wall of plaques, I haven't actually met half the artists that I've worked on their hit records. And Katy, I just met because she happened to be there for like an early meeting with those guys. And then at one point, I remember still working on her first album, stopping by, and she was in the control room with Luke and I don't know who else, but they were smoking cigarettes, and I'm not a smoker. So I was just like, all right, I'm going to go hang out in the lounge. So I didn't even talk to her much because I just didn't want to be around the smoke. But I never saw her after that, even though I worked on some of her follow-up records after she was a big star. But but yeah, I have seen that with other people. And I had a friend that I watched him have a bidding war. For people who don't know what that is, that's somebody gets a lot of attention, and record labels and sometimes publishing companies too are bidding to get them, and they're putting higher bids. And a friend of mine had a bidding war and got a pretty huge publishing deal and record deal. And he kind of changed his vibe up a little bit. And then he had one hit and then everything fell apart. And it gave him a real big dose of humility after that. But for the most part, some of the stars I've worked with, I only met them after they were big. And some of them are super cool. Some of them aren't. Some are actually really nice, but they're shy, and you wouldn't guess that they're shy when they're off stage, and you might misinterpret their shyness for them being cold. They're just, a lot of artists are sensitive, and they're just they can go on stage in front of 20, 50, 100,000 people, and they're cool, but one-on-one in a room, they're still shy artists. So what I will say is certain people have that thing, and I didn't see it in Katy Perry. And I remember working on I Kissed a Girl and Hot and Cold were the songs I worked on her first record. And I was like, this is never going to be a hit. I just really didn't see it for her, and I was very wrong. And then other people, I've worked with Alicia Keys a lot over the years. She was already big by the time I met her, but she has that thing. You walk in the room and it's you get why she's a star. So yeah, that's a little bit of a tangent from your question. But I'm really not with the artists enough to see the before and after. With producers, for sure, I've been around producers and watched them and writers ascend and see, before they're big. But as far as the talent themselves, I'm not around them as much as you would think I am. So, Larry, you're muted.
It's a shame that some of the people here just weren't around like in John Hall's time and my time. And we're going to get to you, John, in a minute. Don't go too far. I see John running off.
It's funny when you started, because John, I didn't know your name, and I apologize, but when Larry was singing your songs, I was like, this is my childhood. That stuff was on the radio all the time.
It's really good to have radio songs that play all the time. That's a very good thing. Just in case you're wondering what's good in the music business, having a song that people are always playing somewhere in the world is a very good thing.
I've played them. I was in a wedding band my first year in New York. I played your music. That's to me, that's a sign of a lasting hit, is when you play it at Sweet 16s, bar mitzvahs, weddings.
Yeah. John, do you wanna unmute and talk about the sweet? Billy, you have a question? I'm gonna let Billy jump in before we.
Well, no, I was just while we're talking and praise. Keep on.
I can.
Yeah, we can't.
That
For some
I've met him
reason,
before,
Billy,
and
Your audio is coming in and out.
yeah, Billy, it's cutting in and out. So let me come back to you. Let John jump in, and then we'll come back, because sometimes it's filtering or buffering.
Okay.
So,
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I was late, but better late than never. And I am a guitar player, so supposed to be late. Well, drummers are actually supposed to be later than guitar players, I think. But
I was a little late too.
yeah. So, Steve, I had a couple questions, and one of them actually is a question that one of our folks here asked on the chat.
Oh, I didn't even see the chat. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, it's what I think it was. What did you major in at Berkeley? What was your focus there?
Oh, that's the thing. I didn't even want to go to Berkeley. I had been gigging by the time I was in high school, and I just wanted to move to I was in Philly, which had a scene, but it was close to New York, and I wanted to either move to New York or LA. And my parents, it was the immigrant mentality thing where I was one of three boys, and they were like, you're the first generation where everybody can go to college, so you and your brothers are going to college. And I had no interest in it, and they knew that I was serious at that point, and they kind of understood that. They still didn't understand you could actually make a living doing it unless you know, and they didn't have anybody in the family that they knew that was like professional in music. So they were like, well, if you go to music school and you get a degree, then you can teach or something like that. So we settled on Berklee. I got in, and but my plan was to network and get a gig and drop out, which is what happened. But I didn't tell them that. I just signed up for performance classes, and I did sign up for some ear training and some theory, just because I wanted to like expand that stuff a little bit. But yeah, I basically signed up for performance classes. So, and then I was gigging at night and just jamming with my fellow students and my teachers eventually. And but yeah, I never had a major. I never plan on graduating. But it's a very different school now than it was when I was there, because I've worked with some recent Berklee graduates or recent dropouts, and it's a very different place. And there's a lot of majors now that didn't, because the technology didn't exist back then. Right. So yeah.
So I went to Notre Dame University in South Bend, Indiana.
Yeah.
Majoring in physics.
Wow.
Supposedly, and I didn't finish either. But if somebody had come to me then and said, "Why don't you switch to music, or why don't you go to Berklee, or why don't you go to Juilliard, or any, you know,
yeah,
Worcester Conservatory," or something, I would have happily done that, but I didn't think of it, and my parents were pushing me toward this. You got to get a real job.
Yeah.
My dad was an engineer and a scientist.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but it all comes in handy, and obviously what you did at Berklee worked in some way, because it may not have been the path that they thought you were going to be on.
Yeah.
But here you are, and you obviously have succeeded in a big way. So that's, I can say the same thing about myself.
Yeah, sure.
Now, I wanted to ask you also, this is my question. Do you find yourself mainly writing with artists, in either artists you believe in or artists who already have a record deal and are making a record?
As far as writing myself, you mean, just doing writing? That's the thing. Like I toured for the first like 10 or 11 years of my career, and I was starting to get into some session work during that time. And I was into programming from the time I was in high school, because that was like the birth of hip hop, and Prince was on the radio, and a lot of records where drum machines were part of the sound. So I realized when I wanted to do more session work and wanted to get off the road, I knew that like there was not, like the golden age of the session musician was done. So I knew the only way I could afford to stay home and just do sessions would be I would have to do a lot more programming and not just drumming. But nobody wanted to hire me just to program drums when they could hire a keyboard player who could do synths and the drums. So I started doing both. And and eventually when people realized I could program things that the average like keyboard player couldn't program, they started using me just to program drums, and I kind of carved that niche out for myself. But the first few years of sessions I was doing as a programmer, I was doing full tracks, and that led to some co-writes, and that led to getting when I got some major label covers, publishing deal offers. And I thought that's something I wanted to get into, and I did it for a while, and I realized it's just, my heart wasn't in it. And my friends that are successful songwriters, like that's their passion. And I really feel like you have to love something to be great at it. And don't get me wrong, like every once in a while, somebody will just pay me a bunch of money to knock out, like say, write something that sounds like this, and I can do it. But I just think karmically, or whatever you want to call it, I should be like leaving the room for people that love that to do that. And I should be doing what I think my best contribution is sometimes as a producer and adding, like helping with some lyrics and changing a melody here or there, but it's really track based. So I don't do that much co-writing anymore. I mean, once in a while, and if I do, I never go into it. It's usually just with friends, and sometimes those friends are signed artists, and sometimes they're just other musicians I'm tight with, or up and coming singer-songwriters or what have you. But I fell into having like a minor hit. Well, it was a major hit, but not in America. It was a big hit in the UK. Just because one of these things I just did for fun, as just somebody heard a track on some it was like a blues electronica record that was not meant for anything other than just we did it for fun. And then somebody who won Pop Idol heard one of those tracks because their producer was a friend of mine and had it. This is how long ago it was, a CD of it. And this producer, who's a big UK producer, asked me, hey, can you send me the Pro Tools session for this? We're going to write a top line to it. And I'm like, yeah, whatever you want. And then a year later, it was like, didn't make us number one. It was like top 5 in the UK, but it was, I made more money from that than I did from like a year of everything else. So, that was a total accident. I wasn't trying to, and I think if I had been trying to write like a quote unquote a hit, nothing would have happened. So, but yeah, sorry if it's not a good answer, but I don't really write that much.
It's a good
I have
answer.
a quick question.
So I have a question for both John and Steve, which is what you just said, Steve. I for years got, everybody's like, oh, if I can't make it as a singer, I'll be a songwriter and just write hits for people, and don't realize like that's really hard, especially these days. So you just said something really true of like, if you try to write a hit, you usually don't. And I'd love to hear your answer, John, about that, because you've had hits. And like, did you think when you got like an envelope with Still the One on it, that was going to be like, a top 3 record that to this day is on the radio all the time, or like that's a big thing. And in the 90s, I was a hired gun. Like I'd go into these bands and the record company would it was like a forced arrangement. The record company would say, we've spent $500,000. We finished the record. They don't have a single, go in there. And then the band is like, who the fuck is this guy, Larry? Pardon my French. I'm not supposed to curse while we're recording, but the band would be to curse again. Who the fuck is Larry? Why is this guy in here? And Atlantic Records is holding a gun to our head. We won't release your record unless you come up with a hit. And it's sort of like being hired to rearrange someone's furniture in a house that they really are happy with the furniture the way it is. So what is that like? Like, how do you like write a hit without trying to write a hit, John? And Steve, you've witnessed this.
I think really what this is about, and what the arts in general are about, is doing what you love and doing it for the love of it. I mean, I wouldn't have been playing music at all if I didn't just love doing it and more than I love doing anything else. And my parents kept trying to send me back to college to study something they thought was real. I was lucky to have one aunt on my father's side of the family, my Aunt Connie, who's, thank God, still with us. And she was the only one of that generation, my parents' generation, in my family, who said, well, if you love music and it's all you want to do, then do it. And it was so great. I'll always be grateful to her. I just, can't say, how much I love that she was there, and I love her for saying that, because she gave me permission to follow my dream and to do what I love. Still the One to Dance with Me. Those are the 2 biggest records that I've written and co-written with my wife at the time, Johanna, and one of them, I was just noodling on the guitar in the living room one day in our house outside of Woodstock, New York, in the town of Saugerties, and I had an open D tuning going, and I just played that. Well, it was a drop D tuning. It was a regular tuning with the E string down to a D, but I played that line. I was just fooling around with different suspensions and moving the top 3 strings, changing chords on them while the low strings stayed the same. And I came up with a da 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 da. And so she said from the kitchen, sounds like Dance With Me. And I said, that's pretty obvious. Maybe we should try for something more unusual than that. And of course, she was right. But that's what I was thinking about then. And finishing the song was like, well, I had a piece of it and it was gnawing at me. I wasn't thinking, I want to write this hit. It was just that I had it in my head and wouldn't get out of my head. And Larry from Orleans also said, you really ought to finish that, because I played him the beginning of it. He said, wow, that's really good. You should finish that. And the second one, Still the One, Johanna handed me lyrics on the back of an envelope. A friend of both of ours from when we lived in an apartment on the Lower East Side of Manhattan had asked her to write a song about people staying together because she and her husband were breaking up and getting divorced. And so Johanna, responding to that request from a friend, wrote that whole, we've been together since way back when, sometimes I never want to see you again, et cetera, et cetera. You're still the one. I want to talk to you in bed, still the one that can turn my head. We're still having fun. You're still the one. It's a song about people working it out and, staying together. I wrote the lyrics, I wrote the music to that about, 10 or 15 minutes. It was just, it was like Chuck Berry Beach Boys stuff that came out of me musically, but neither of us were thinking, oh my God, we got to write a hit. Sometimes it's really, the work has to stand on its own. That's my belief. And so I have tried to write hits, and I've written songs that got cut. I'm always, when I'm writing with an artist who has a record deal, and especially if they're well known, like Steve Wariner, wonderful country singer and guitar player, fabulous guitar player and singer. And he had already had a couple of hits, and I had an opportunity to write with him. And I was at the Y playing racquetball and, getting sweaty and then taking a shower. In the shower, I heard this, chorus, if you're dreaming of someone, you can dream of me. And it's a guy talking to a woman, a girl, if you will, when there's been some kind of attraction, but the guy's not free. He's married. He's not free to go to somebody else. And I kept that in my head. I just kept singing it to myself. Drove to Steve's house from the Y. We sat down together and finished the song, and it was a #1 country record. So that's the kind of thing that I just really believe. I think I said this last week, so sorry if I'm being repetitive, but if you have an idea, don't let go of it. Write it down, sing it into a recorder of some sort, or play it into a recorder, and just try to hang on until you can either finish it yourself or get someone to help you. And in this case, someone helped me.
I'm going to jump in because there's a bunch of questions, and we'll just make it more conversational. And we have a guy, Nathan and Corey, who have joined us this week. And Nathan was literally holding up a piece of paper saying, I have a question for, the last 10 or 15 minutes. So it's a burning desire.
No, I wasn't. That was not me. It was Carson. It was Carson.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So it's not you, but it's actually a different Nathan. I didn't realize we have actually two Nathans this week. So I'm going to go to the other Nathan and unmute you and say, come on in, Nathan, who is with my friend Corey in Los Angeles, wherever you are, Nathan.
Hey, Steve. I have a question about Hot and Cold. We still blast it all the time in the car. And I know Benny, Luke, and Max worked on that song, so I just want to know what your contribution to the song was.
Honestly, it's I didn't know I had contributed to it, and this goes back to where it was like a little bit of a factory in the basement there. Do you know what an MPC is when I say programming? Yeah, exactly. So there was a singer, I think her name is Kathy Dennis. Does that ring a bell? She's a big...
Oh my gosh, she's the best.
Okay, so Luke had been writing with her, and he had a bunch of tracks he was working with her, and this was easily a year before the Hot and Cold. And Luke was like, I have this song, it's whatever, it's got like, I want you to add something, but don't make it sound like a typical dance beat. So I every once in a while, I'd bring a batch of new sounds on a zip disk, which is how we used to load sounds into an MPC. And I loaded some sounds, I do some sound design. So I had these like quirky electronic drum sounds, and I loaded them in, and it was basically a disco beat, which for, I don't know who else knows drums here besides me and Billy, but that's that open hi-hat sound, which if you listen to EDM, there's an electronic version of that. But I was like, hey, how about if we do that, but instead of an open hi-hat, we use this like, it's this Slide Dunbar sound I recreated. Slide Dunbar was a big, or still is a big Jamaican session drummer, but he did a lot of electronic stuff. And so he had this like really quirky envelope-y like electronic tom sound. So I said, let's tune it to the track and have it do the upbeats. And if you listen to Hot and Cold, there's something running through the track which is just upbeat, like it almost sounds like a blip, like a low-pitched blip. and instead of an open hi-hat. And so that was on this Kathy Dennis song he's working on, and some other sounds that I put in there. And then I don't know how much later, Luke calls me. He's like, hey, I have these 2 Katy songs. I want you to play live drums on I Kissed a Girl, and I want you to add some programming to this other song, Hot and Cold. So both songs were essentially done, like written, but when he played me Hot and Cold where it was, I was like, that's my shit that I did on that Kathy Dennis track. And he said, yeah, we just took it. I just went to the FBC and like printed that over Hot and Cold. And so I listened to it. I gave him some other electronic sounds to kind of flesh the track out. But like he and Benny, now if I were more, and I probably should be more money-minded, I should have asked him, did you write Hot and Cold on top of that upbeat electronic thing? Because if that inspired you to write this track, I should get some publishing on this. But I didn't even say that. And Luke had always been really generous with me as far as bringing me in for stuff and giving me production on things that I didn't think, like, and again, I didn't think anything was going to happen with Katy. So I wasn't like, hey, I want production, I want something. I was just like, yeah, just pay me a programming fee. But yeah, so basically he took something that I did for a completely different song, and I don't know if they wrote to it or the song was already done and he said, hey, I got this cool thing, we'll did another song and just threw it in there, in which case maybe I don't get publishing. But yeah, so I'm sorry if it's a disappointing thing, but I didn't have much to do with the creation of the song other than sonically there's some cool elements in the track that I did, but I did on a completely different song. So that he
it's super cool. It's super cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Larry, you're muted.
Yeah, the muted guy. So there's somebody named Erica here who had her hand up, and I want to ask Erica to unmute, and you have a question, and then we have Carissa has a question. So do we have Erica with us?
Yeah, straight there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually just saying hi.
Oh, okay. Right.
That's all.
Okay. Yeah, Erica's an old friend of mine from New York.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I don't know. Where are you these days? Where are you now?
I'm in Manhattan. I'm in the East Village.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. Well, thank Larry. I just asked Larry just to get you in here. So yeah.
All right.
Thank you, both of you.
Yeah. I
All
hope
right.
I hope that you're
I'll let
learning.
someone else ask.
Yeah. Cool.
Huh?
I said I hope you're learning because there's a lot of really good information here being shared.
Yeah, I'm taking notes.
Cool.
I'm taking notes.
We have a friend of mine named Carissa who's just finishing her first album and releasing it this summer, and she had her hand up. So Carissa, do you want to unmute?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all. This is really inspiring and super helpful to me. One of my hangups is I don't play an instrument and I don't have a lot of theory. So I'm one of those like lyrics and melody songwriters. And I'm just wondering like how okay is that? And also like tips you have for collaborating, because my process so far, Larry said, I just finished my debut EP and I always bring lyrics and melody like in voice notes to a producer and we go from there. But like, is that a way to build a career? And what tips do you have for collaborating?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can say that what you do, we call it top line writing. And I know some very like incredibly wealthy top line writers that only do lyrics and melody. And I know somebody who's not even a melody guy. I'm not going to say his name, but he is one of today's biggest like rock songwriters. And I watched him come up, and now I'm seeing him featured in Billboard. And he's really just a lyrics guy. It's not even lyrics and melody. He's just an idea guy. And sometimes his idea will be as simple as he'll get in a room with some popular writers, with a popular artist, and say, hey, I was thinking about, why don't we write a song about this? And that's his contribution, just planting the seed. And you can absolutely have a great career. So just with lyrics. So, and some people so there's some huge songwriting teams that were, I think Elton John and was it Benny Taupin? Is that his name?
Bernie Taupin.
Bernie, sorry, yeah.
Bernie just used to mail him the lyric and then never even meet. Just here's here's Goodbye, here's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road in the mail, and Elton would mess around and there's the song. I mean,
Yeah.
Bernie has a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you absolutely, lyrics and melody, you can absolutely have a great career. As far as, I think you also asked, how do you find people to collaborate with? It's like anything else, just, I mean, now you can't really put yourself out there, especially like right now, everybody's under quarantine, but it's easier than ever to meet people online. And I have a friend who's actually just a top line writer, and she's a pretty successful clothing designer. And for years, and she's friends with a lot of musicians, including me, for years, she was like, I'd like to write one day. And I'm like, we'll just do it. And like, so many people and you're a cool person, and I'm sure they'd want to like at least give you a shot. And she sent me some ideas, and she'll literally just sing something into her phone, just a cappella. And she's got some good ideas, and now people are starting to take notice with her. And she's doing things like this. She's doing like online courses, and it's like hit or miss with anything else. But it's also like, my career has been entirely word of mouth. So, just do what you do, and the more people you collaborate, or the more people that hear your shit, the more people will, you'll just, those connections will kind of happen organically. But yeah, absolutely. Like, top line is a really good skill to have. You can totally have a great career. So
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So I'm going to jump to our friend Tushar, who was with us last week, because he's in India and it's like 3:30 or 4 in the morning or something. So Tushar, do you have a question? I know that it's late there, and then we're going to get to Juliet and Sophie.
I see a couple other people with their hands raised too.
Oh, good. Excellent.
So, thanks, Larry. Hi, Steve.
Hi, how's it going, Tushar?
Hi. Quick question. How do the majority of artists that you've come across go about doing arrangements for their song? If they compose their music on their primary instrument, how do they go about doing arrangements for the song? Do they get people to come on work for hire, or do they share rights to the song to get in people to arrange the song? How do they go about it?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
There's really not one answer, because there are a lot of artists, like let's say a Britney Spears, where like I've worked with her years ago, and as far as I know, her only contribution to the song was the producer walked her in the room at a certain point and said, hey, Britney, this is Wolf and this is so-and-so, they're working on your record. She's like, oh, cool, nice to meet you. And then she went next door to do some press or something. And then at a certain point, they kicked everyone out of the studio because she was nervous. She was shy about singing with people in the room. But like, that's an example of the writing and the production was completely done without the artist, with very little involvement with the artist. And there's somebody else like Alicia Keys, who's very hands-on. And every time I've worked with her, she has collaborators in the room for the most part, or by the time I get to the track, it's already pretty far along, but she's usually either doing it herself completely and then just having people come in to flesh it out, or she's collaborating with another writer or like writer producer. So those are two extremes, where Alicia is like the most hands-on artist I've ever worked with, and then somebody like a Britney Spears, who is really not very hands-on. But I think it's a spectrum, and it's mostly somewhere in the middle. But it also depends if, when you say an artist, certain artists play instruments and can get a pretty decent arrangement on their own, and other artists don't, or some artists can program. And I've worked with artists where the song's pretty much done. They've done everything on their own, and they just bring me in to kind of help flesh it out. And there are other artists where they need collaborators from the beginning to kind of get it somewhere. So I don't know if that does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
what
sorry, there's not really one answer. It's a spectrum.
And that's the thing about this, is just, for every rule, there's 1,000 other examples that break that rule, and it's a creative process. And also, Tushar, just, to clarify that when you have a song, and let's say you do have at least like the music in your mind, or the lyrics or melody. If I come in and let's say just add a guitar, and you're paying me to play the guitar, that's arrangement. It's not songwriting. all the time people come to hire me that take my NYU songwriting class, and they'll have saved a budget or something. They say, I want to get some pro people, so I'll hire the Billy Joel band that plays at Madison Square Garden in New York, and because they sound like a band. If it's somebody who plays, you know, as a singer-songwriter, or if it's somebody who's more of a modern production type singer like Britney or Katy, I'll go to Steve Wolf and have him, you know, I'll play him a song that sounds like the direction I want to go, and say, can you make it sound a little like Since You've Been Gone, or make it sound like Wrecking Ball or something, and we'll go in that direction. But it's not, I'm not the writer. I'm being hired to flesh out the song. But in other cases, like Steve was mentioning the song where he put programming on one song, but then they wrote to some of his work in another. Like there's a different kind of area where it's sort of 50-50. You could say, well, my ideas inspired you to write the song. I'm a co-writer, or at least a co-publisher. So again, there's a lot of gray area here that is a case-by-case thing. But if you're paying someone, let's say, when people come to pay me and they say, here's the song, and literally people have screamed into their iPhone, and I have to sort of figure out what the chords are and hire the band and the engineers and studios. I'm not the songwriter. I'm really just the producer, because I'm arranging the song. But if it doesn't have a bridge, if it doesn't have a second verse, if the chorus is bad and I throw it out and I write something and they say, oh, I like that even better, then I'm a co-writer. So just wanted to clarify that for you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Larry.
Yeah. So I want to go to Sophie and Juliet in Belgium, if you guys have a question.
Hi, so first of all, thank you so much for this. I'm learning so much. Second of all, you can choose who is going to answer this question. Basically, my question is like, where do you start in writing a song like Purple Rain? Because we all know Purple Rain is like a masterpiece. And I'm taking Purple Rain as an example because that's the first song that made me bawl my eyes out. Like I was just crying. Like it was not normal. So I just want to know, how do you start with writing a song like that?
Can I throw this to John Hall? Because it's an organic song. John, if you're with us somewhere.
Yeah. Boy, that's a good question. And I never had a chance to ask Prince that. He was both a guitar player and a keyboard player. And I've heard a recorded version of him. Well, of course, the big hit version where he was playing guitar on. And but he has played it on keyboard. And there's a record of his, it was released posthumously, of him playing all those songs on piano. So so he could have started on either one. I don't know, but my guess is he had the chorus first. That's just you know,
yeah,
at least in my experience as a writer, that sounds to me like a song where you had the purple rain, and then the verses probably required a little more work. Maybe not for him.
I want to add something to that just from the track perspective or the instrumental. When I was first learning to, like, I can play a little guitar, and I basically learned to play guitar when I was versing in bands in junior high and high school. My parents were cool enough to let us play it in the attic. So my friends would leave guitars and basses and keyboards around. So I remember learning Purple Rain in high school, and I think it's a 9 chord, the first chord of the verse. Is that? Yeah. There's that second in there, and I remember hearing that, and I'm like, that was like, because before that I only knew bar chords, and I was just learning by ear, and that was such a distinctive thing for, wow, that's really hip to write a verse of a pop song that's starting with such tension in the chord. And I always assumed he started with that, just because to me as a drummer, I just tuned into that chord. But I think what you're saying makes more sense, that that's such a heavy chorus. He probably started with the chorus. Yeah.
We don't know. There's no way to find out. But unless somebody knows the guys in his band, or knows.
I was going to say Wendy and Lisa. The Revolution has been touring with different singers running them, and they've been doing questions and answers when they do their shows. That would be a great question to ask them.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you guys for joining us.
David,
Corey has a question. Corey and Carson, you're
And
up.
David Pollock, I see, has
Yeah.
been
Oh, cool. Okay.
raising his hand for a while.
All right. You know, it's funny. I'm not seeing it here on my participant list, so I have to. Maybe I'm not getting all the participants. So yeah, we're going to do Corey and then David.
Okay.
This is weird. I'm the host, but I'm not seeing all the hands raised. So.
So I'm Carson. Steve, thank you so much for being here. I've been a huge fan of your work and Dr. Luke's for about like the last 10 years or so. I've studied it. I started working with Logic when I was 14. I released an EP all studied and based around his techniques and downloading his stems and resessioning them. So I'm a huge fan. So you being here is amazing to me. I have two quick questions for you. One, I was just curious. I'm starting to produce for other artists right now, which so far has been really great. And this is Corey. He's one of the artists that I'm producing
Sorry, I'm just running
for.
around. I'm still here though.
And how does an artist who's not quite, or even a producer who's not quite made it over that bridge to that sort of upper echelon of music and industry and masters, how do you get into that bridge? How do you get your foot and your hands in the door?
There's really no one way. You know what I mean? Like I have a friend now who is a guy named Billy Mann, who some people here know. Billy and I were in a band, and we met when we were 11. So we were in bands in junior high and high school. And he was busking on the streets in New York in like early 90s. And a guy who was a big guy and did a lot of stuff for Sony Records at the time heard him. And the next thing I know, Billy calls me. He's like, hey man, I got a publishing deal and a record deal. And he did 2 albums, and it was just, they didn't really know how to market him. And I worked a little on the first and the second record. I did the whole record, and he's an amazing singer. And but nobody knows him as an artist because the records didn't do that well. But in the meantime, as a writer, he was writing for Celine Dion. It's like whoever was big at the time, he was getting really big covers of his songs, and he just like went full steam ahead in that world. And now he's like a manager and a publisher. And like I said, he got his start that way, and he's finding artists that he's signing artists to his own company now that he's just finding on YouTube. Like, so sometimes it's like that. Other times, like with Dr. Luke, he was doing stuff, and he was doing some stuff, mostly hip hop, because that's really where his heart was for a long time. He met Max like at an industry party, and Luke was playing guitar in the SNL band for 10 years. And I think maybe he met Max at an after party, and Luke used to DJ some of those parties. He would just tell the people at SNL, let me DJ. And he was friends with Max for a while and never brought up, let me write with you, because everybody wanted to write with Max. And like, they just developed a friendship. And eventually Max one day was like, hey, why don't we write something together? And that was, even though Luke had some like, was like making some noise in the music business. And like I said, he had been signed as part of this electronica duo, lost that deal, had some like some other stuff happening here and there, but it, you know, not at the level of like their first Since You've Been Gone, his first major hit. But that happened after meeting Max and then just the co-write. So, but yeah, I mean, and I could go on if I start to think about other people I know that have like been really successful. It's different with everyone. Like I played with a band. I did one of the last tours I did in the 90s was with a band. My friend called me, a guy named Jack Daly, who's like a top-notch bass player. And we had done a bunch of stuff together, and he was in London. He said, hey, I just did a record for 2 months, and this band's follow-up record, they had a couple massive hits on their first album. They're about to do like an arena tour in the UK, like playing Wembley Arena and like sold out everywhere, like big halls. And I was like, what are they called? And he said, you won't know them because they're not big in the States at all. But I got out there, and all of a sudden they're massive. And I basically lived in the UK for a year and just toured like Western Europe and the UK with those guys. And I became really good friends with the lead singer. And I was like, how did you guys get here? Because it was pretty quick for them. And he was, and kind of like what John was saying, he was at school, but not for music. I think he was studying economics. And he met somebody else at school and said, hey, I heard you sing. I write songs. And this guy was also studying something like, but not music. And this guy played keyboards, and he said, I have these chord ideas. Maybe you want to write some lyrics and melodies to them. And Carissa, this goes to what you're saying about being a top line writer. And they just collaborated, and they made this, you know, they made some like really simple demos. Somebody heard it, and then it got produced, and their first record came out, and they got 2 massive licenses for TV ads in the UK. And that put them on the map. And then after that, once their foot's in the door, then, and the UK, if you've been there, it's a very small market, but they're very passionate. Like if you've ever seen footage of Glastonbury, you'll see artists that are not that big outside of the UK, but you'll see like 100,000 people singing along, like word for word. And so like, yeah, but these, and those, that's what happened for these guys. And they've done really well for themselves just over there, but like in a huge way. And it just started from like meeting in the dorm room, and just very organically just say, like, they did what they loved. And that's something that John was saying earlier also, just if it's coming from that place, you're doing it because you love it and it's your passion. Like, you know, if they hadn't done that, the singer would be an accountant now, and the keyboard player, it's really 2 guys in the band, would be probably a CPA also. But like, just for the love of it, they said, hey, let's write some music. They, you know, left school and became big stars over there. So I don't really think there's any one way to kind of get to that level. I think the main thing is just do it. Yeah. And like with do you know who Layla Hathaway is? Mm-hmm. I went to Berkeley with her, and she was Donny Hathaway's daughter, and she was a beautiful girl, sang her ass off. And I was like, okay, so she's music royalty. She looks great. She sings great. She can write. She's going to be huge. And sure enough, she got a record deal right out of school. Like when I dropped out in '89, she had a deal. I remember seeing her on like the Arsenio Hall show, which was a big show at the time. And I was sure she was going to blow up. But even with all that stuff behind her, nothing happened for her. And so, but it's her passion. And so she would still do like, she had a core, like a cult following. So year after year, she would just play clubs around wherever and maybe do a jazz festival here or there. But really not very well known, but she developed fans. Like Prince became a fan, Stevie Wonder became a fan. A lot of influential people loved her. And then about 25 years after she lost her initial record deal, she won her first Grammy. And then since then, now, like, she's won I don't know, maybe 5 Grammys in the last however many years, but it took her 25 years of just doing what she loved, not making a lot of money, not having a lot of fame, but just she did it because she loved it. And it just took a minute for the culture to kind of catch up to her. Yeah. So yeah, some people, it happens quickly, some people quarter of a century. But I think if you're good at what you do and you're passionate about it and you stay out of your own way, eventually something will happen.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And my other question is, with you working with Dr. Luke, I mean, the records that you both have touched, you guys have that Midas touch. Like, they are pop hits.
Yeah.
They defined a decade in pop music, like hands down. I'm curious, in your experiences, if you could give 3 skills or characteristic traits for upcoming producers to have, what would they be?
Well, I mean, I'd say Luke really has the Midas touch. I've just been like, I helped, it's cool, but like, it's definitely his thing. I would say from him in particular, like 3 characteristics of what he does, I would say simplicity. And I think he got a lot of that from Max. And then like unwavering belief in yourself, which is something I met Luke when he was 15. And he looked a lot older. I was playing at a jazz club, and he just walked up to me like he owned the place. And I assumed he was older and he was supposed to be there. And then somebody said, "Oh, that's my guitar student. That's Lukash." And but he had every bit of bravado that he had after he, like, quote unquote made it. But like, his attitude never changed. He acted like he was like the king of the hill when he was a 15-year-old like kid with nothing happening. He was just learning to play guitar. So I think that like unwavering like belief in what you do, simplicity, and then also I think something that Luke has done really well. I mean, everybody does it. Like, everybody's taking things that are already out there and then putting their own spin on it. But he did, when he played me Since You've Been Gone, like the first time. I heard it before it was on the radio, and I knew what he was listening to at the time, and I was like, oh, the guitar, that's some alt rock guitar stuff that you got from, and I won't even name the list of bands that he was listening to, but I was like, you're doing that, but you're mixing that with like your like MPC hip hop style production, but you're kind of putting it all, like wrapping it up with like a nice bow as a pop single. So I would say don't be afraid to mix stuff that you normally wouldn't see going together, and just keep it simple. Well, I mean, if you want to reach a mass market, like less is more, 100%, and just believe in yourself. Those are the three traits, at least for Luke. If you ask me about a different super producer, they have other things, but for Luke, I think that was a big key to his success.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah, and I want to add something to that went by really fast and unnoticed that he said about Luke meeting Max and kind of hanging with him for a year. And I remember this really striking a chord in me when Steve told me at his house during a session one day that you know, Max Martin, when he was at his height, was the biggest producer in the world in certain periods of the 90s and 2000 and since then. And you know, when you're that kind of person, like everybody's on you all the time for everything, every minute of the day. And so when you meet somebody who doesn't ask you for stuff, who just wants to hang, like that's like all these people are over there, and then there's like one person standing here, and your eye goes to that one person. And I've noticed that in my own life over the years in all areas of my life, that sometimes there's a saying like who you are is if you look at the 5 people you're closest to, that tells you who you are. And so I've been looking at the people I'm around and looking at the people that I hang with, and I've been, you know, I'm a student of success, what works and what doesn't. And I have noticed friends of mine that will hang out with somebody who's very successful in whatever field. It could be art, it could be sports, it could be science, it could be academia, it could be finance. And eventually just sort of hanging and being part of someone's posse, and especially if your agenda is like we talked about, doing what you love, if it's pure, if you don't have this long game con thing of like, I'm going to get their money or I'm going to get in there. If you're just like become a friend, eventually people are like stuck and they have nobody to turn to. They're like, can you design my office? Or can you write this song? Or can you produce this? They throw it at you. And in my case right now, I've been in fundraising mode for tech companies in wearing a very different hat, which is investor relations. And I met a guy who's a billionaire, venture capitalist. And when I read his book and read his bucket list, I found him online. I said, I think I can help you at one of these bucket list things. And the guy was like, who's Larry? You know, again, who on earth is this guy Larry? And we're like really good friends now. And I haven't asked the person for anything, but I notice in business, like somebody will pitch their company and saying, I need a few $1 million, and he'll answer that person 2 months later. But if I email them, I get an email back in like 20 minutes. Like I'm really making a genuine friendship, and I'm enjoying that friendship, and I'm not in no hurry to translate that into some transactional thing. But that reminds me of the story that Steve told. So what I want to say to everyone is getting in with the right people. You don't have to ask, can you produce me? Can you write my songs? Can you find money? Can I use your studio? Just get in with the right people. Like switch your glasses around. Instead of seeing the world of what can I get here? What can I get there? And look at it as what can I give here? And what can I give there? You'll go sailing fast, you know, to the finish line. So we only have a few more minutes, and I know that David has been patiently waiting with a question, and because it's for some reason the hand isn't up in my chat box, which is weird. But David, you want to ask something quick, and then I want to wrap up. And
yeah. No, thank you so much. You know, that is really, really great advice, and that's kind of something that I've kind of learned over time. I've learned that the hard way in my 20s, and now I'm finally starting to get it. And it's like, it's kind of just something you learn from experience. You know, it's just like you gotta strike out to hit the ball. You know, so anyway, here's a question for Steve. So when I think of like drum programming, I think of Kraftwerk, but who are like some of your great influences as a drummer, as a drum, as a rhythm maker,
as a drummer, it's too long a list to get into because
yeah.
I've talked to Billy Amendola. Billy, yeah, there he is. About this, like some people who I didn't realize were my influences, and they were more like passive influences, like Ringo. I never, Ringo's drum parts are seemingly simple, but it's really hard to come up with like a simple part like that really makes the song. But I listened, when I was a kid, I was like transcribing the great jazz drummers because that was like more complicated and I had to really focus in on the drums to really figure out what was happening. But I was listening to the radio all the time, R&B radio and pop radio, rock radio. So like I heard, Still the One. Like when I joined a wedding band, they would call songs like that or any other song that was a big hit. I never studied the drums, but those drummers, whoever played on those tracks influenced me because I just listened to them on the radio all the time. So Ringo is like the big one I can think of but there are a lot of people like Ringo, but guys, I don't know who played on Still the One, but I learned.
That was Jerry Marotta.
Oh, wow. Jerry Marotta is a badass who I'm a big fan of.
He's a badass. He's a badass drummer.
Yeah. So there's a lot of drummers like that, especially in the R&B world too, where I just recently learned the name of somebody who passed recently, Woody Woodson, who played with the Isley Brothers. And I knew a lot, and Otis Redding. I knew his drumming, but I never knew his name. But I never studied it. I just kind of listened to that on R&B radio when I was a kid. So I just kind of picked up a lot of that stuff. And that really eventually paid off when I started doing sessions because I knew how to make a song work, because all those drummers are like the jazz stuff. It's about check me out on the drums. I'm playing some complex shit. Not all jazz drummers, but a lot of it, and especially in fusion. But that's the stuff I was gravitating towards. But the drummers who were more supportive, especially on pop and R&B records, that was like a masterclass in like how to really support the song. So there are too many to list, and there's so many in different genres. But for programming, that's a shorter list, so I can get to that. So the first drum programming that I really noticed was Prince, what he was doing with the Lindrum on those early records, and then a guy named David Frank, who I'm good friends with now from a band called The System. But David also did programming on a ton of records for other big artists. He's on a lot of hits. And he was programming on Oberheim DMX and a lot of stuff you hear in trap music now with hi-hats doing like 30-second triplets and things. David was one of the first guys I heard doing that in the 80s. And then people like Kraftwerk. And then, Kraftwerk influenced the early hip hop guys like Afrika Bambaataa, Planet Rock. That was...
Yeah, that record was just the straight, like, whoa, the Afrika Bambaataa stuff with that was crazy. Yeah. So a lot of the early hip hop guys, but like I said, those guys were influenced by everybody from Kraftwerk to you name it. So Marley Marl, who was an early hip hop producer, I loved his programming, and I forget the guy's name. Run DMC, Sucker MCs was the first song I heard on the radio where the track was literally just a drum beat, and it was just with like 3 or 4 voices. Sucker MCs. It was all there wasn't even hip hop radio in the 80s. It was just R&B radio would play some rap songs. And I forget the name of the guy that did the beat. He's like an unsung hero. I think Larry Smith is credited as the producer, but I heard from some other people who grew up in Jamaica, Queens, that they're like, oh, I think the guy's name was Pumpkin or something, like that was his beat. So, but yeah, I would say Prince and David Frank were the first 2 programmers I really like locked in on and had to really study as far as the beats they made and also sonically, especially Prince sonically, because the Lindrum has very like identifiable sounds, but just by detuning the side stick, when you listen to like the intro on When Doves Cry, that's such an identifiable sound. And that was just because Prince said, hey, let me just detune some of these sounds a little bit. And I've become friends with Jimmy Braylauer, who was programming on a lot of records in the 80s. And he was friends with Roger Lynn, who designed the Lindrum. And I was asking him about how difficult it was to, like everything's so easy now with plugins. But back then it was like, you had to like open up the machine and like twist knobs to Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, I was watching this thing the other day with Kate Bush when she was doing she was one of the first people with, oh my God, what's his name? To really use samples.
Yeah,
I remember. Oh my God, what's his name? I mean, he's He's really famous too.
Like Trevor Horn.
Trevor Horn, yes, but you know, he's a very, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but I'll come back to it. But he's like a, you know, he did a lot of work with Kate Bush. But anyway, it was just like really interesting, like, you know, how there was this like big, huge computer and like this like, you know, keyboard thing, and they had to like program everything. It was crazy.
Like yeah, Fairlight or a Synclab.
The Fairlight. That's what it was.
Yeah,
I watched a documentary on that. That was really cool.
Yeah, and like those things cost like 6 figures, I think.
Yeah, that thing was ridiculous.
Yeah, and Billy remembers, and you had to study a manual to learn it, and now it's like you can do that on, you know, you can get an app to do all that. But
yeah, you get an app to do that in a second. Yeah, but it's just so crazy. Like it started there, and with Kraftwerk, those things were played live. You know, it's pretty amazing. Well, you know, it's just amazing how it
that
turned
was
into
pre-MIDI, because that was
pre-MIDI, exactly. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, if you're not familiar with the record "You Are in My System," called "A Band by the System," check it out, because that was pre-MIDI also, and it's a great example of like synth-based programming, synth programming in general, and drum programming. And
okay, cool.
Also pre-MIDI, and that guy's on so many records that you wouldn't know that he was like the sound of the tracks of a lot of 80s hits. So
cool. It's called "You Are the System."
No, "You Are in My System" is the name of the song. The band was called The System.
The System, and then "You Are in My System." Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
No problem.
We only have a couple of minutes to wrap up, and I wanted to ask Steve, because I've been asked, is there a way that people can follow you, stay in touch? Could you in the chat put your website or Facebook, or how do people find you? And I also want to ask John again to do that too, so people can come out to shows or you know, buy new music that you're putting out, so that so people can kind of connect with you guys.
Yeah, I'll do that. And I just wanted to say, as a guitar player and songwriter, when you get to cutting a demo or especially a record of a song, the drummer is hugely important. And I've been lucky enough to, I admire Steve's work, and you know, there are some terrific drummers and programmers around, but you know, I started playing and recording before there were drum machines, and I had the pleasure of working with Bernard Purdy and Larry London and Denny Sywell and Jim Keltner, and I mean, just people where the feel is actually a challenge for a machine to reproduce. It can be done maybe if you really, maybe Steve can do it, but I haven't figured out how to program those kinds of sort of in between the shuffle and the straight beat.
Yeah, there's a way to do that, but it's for stuff like that, I only program that if there's not a budget to mic up the kit and do it. But yeah, no, that stuff, it's much better to play it that way. Give it that feel.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I'd say.
You work some of my favorites. Those are some of the names when you asked who my influences were for drummers. You know, Purdy, Keltner, all those guys.
Yeah, I never got to play with Al Jackson, but you know.
Yeah,
there's some just legendary drummers who they're in, like you were saying, Steve, they're in the ether. If you're listening to old R&B or old rock and roll or jazz, you know, it's impossible to escape these people's work, even if you don't know their name.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so please.
So Larry, I just put my website, wolfadelic.com. There's a contact form on there, which just goes to my Gmail, and then my Instagram at wolfdrum_drums is there.
That's awesome. Because we also, just for everybody who's come in that's new this week, we have a Facebook page that's kind of like a secret private one, mainly for you guys to meet each other and ask questions and advice or play music. So if you're not on Facebook, like a couple of people didn't actually have Facebook, please consider signing up, just so that you can kind of stay in touch with the members of the class here and have a little bit of what Steve was talking about, this community, this thing that happens. And I'm really grateful. I really feel like there was this great, I'm sure Steve, and John, you've heard of Bert Padell. There was this accountant who was the accountant to the stars when I came to New York. Like, he had every artist, you know, and people like the Yankees and De Niro and Peter Max, the artist, like all of these incredible people. And You'd go up to his office and it would be floor to ceiling gold records and platinum records and baseballs signed by things, and Madonna's bra with lipstick on, like crazy stuff. And I asked him once, you know, I figured this guy, like he was a bat boy for the Yankees in 1949 and 50 when they won the World Series 2 years in a row. And then he became an accountant and like has handled like every rock star imaginable. And I thought like, he's got to know the secret. And I asked him once, like, what's the secret, Bert? Like, you've been around fame, success, you know, people who make it in New York can make it anywhere. And he just said to me, you know, if you stick around long enough, something's bound to happen. And I was really disappointed by that answer. What do you mean stick around long enough? Like I'm late, you know, I'm 23, I'm old already. Like, help, like get me out of this. I'm by 24, it's too late. And so, you know, the pleasure of the relationships, people, as I said before, like get in with the people, like make friends with people. Like John Hall and I have known each other since the 80s. We played in a pickup blues band in Woodstock in the mid 80s called Stormy Monday. And we used to play like, you know, old soul songs and Motown songs, and people would get up and jam with us. And it was the only thing happening in Woodstock on a Monday. And it was like some nights were really bad, and some nights it was a house on fire. And through the years, we've swerved and you know, up the mountain and down into the valley. And that's the joy of doing what you love and being an artist and creator, and everything that Steve has said, where he's just talked about his love of playing and his love and appreciation of these great creators that had came before him, and then the honor of working with them and meeting people and they become your colleagues. It's an amazing adventure, and it takes, like he said with Luke, like a kind of audacity, which is one of the do what you love principles. You have to be 15 and walk up to someone like, I own the place, and that works, and at the same time humility to not, you know, sabotage yourself or not shoot yourself in the foot. So I want to thank everybody here and say we're going to come back next week on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. It's Wednesday, June 2nd. And another person who is in my, who I look up to like a hero, in addition to Steve Wolf and John Hall, is Katy Agresta. Is a singing coach, and more than a singing coach. She talks to people about what they eat, and she leads like people in cosmic sound healings and chanting and breath work. And, you know, John Bon Jovi was inducted as a solo artist into the Rock Hall of Fame last year. He flew, he rented 2 jets, and he flew all of his original people and his current people out. And from the stage, the first person he thanked when he was going through a rough time, and his manager died and his career was on the skids, but then he was nursed back to successes, he thanked Katy Agresta. And she told me something amazing, that he still goes to her 2-3 times a week when he's in New York. He's got an apartment, and it's 30 years later, and even though he's rich and famous, his dedication to his craft, like he wants to be known as the best singer in the world. And maybe that won't happen with Freddie Mercury around or other people, but he's so dedicated to learning and growing and practicing, even at his stage in life, that it's an inspiration. So we're going to learn other things. And certainly, Steve, I know that you're really busy and have a lot of things, and you're also just enjoying life, but you're welcome, and John's welcome, and everyone. So I really want to thank all of you. And I'm going to just mute my camera so that people can filter out and say goodbye. And if you want to unmute and say goodbye to Steve and to John and myself, please do. And just thank you for tuning in. This is me doing what I love, is creating this little soup of creativity here. So thank you, guys.
Well, thanks for having me, Larry.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you guys. Thanks, Larry.
Everybody. Good to see you, Billy.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you guys so much. Sorry I was cooking throughout most of this, but I was listening. I promise.
Everyone.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks so
John.
much, guys. Thanks a lot. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Larry.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Did it.
Thanks, Steve.
Awesome.
Thanks, John. Thanks,
Yeah, thanks.
Larry.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Erica.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Larry, I just found my way into the Facebook group. If you can accept me, please.
We'll do that. I'll do that for anyone who goes in there. We'll definitely get you in there. So not to worry.
Thank you. Have a good night, y'all.
All right, see everybody.
Bye.
All right, Larry, I got to sign off, but I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace, everybody.
All right, see everybody.
Ciao. Ciao.